The Outlander Claw detachment. Now I expect that at some point during this video I will call this the Outrider Claw detachment. Look out for that. But this is the Mad Max theme. You've got bikes, you've got buggies, they're all flying across the ash wastes or the desert wastes or the snow wastes. Whatever colour you want to paint your bases. The Outlander Claw has the most difficult playstyle for most people. It's not a lot of hammer hitting or ambush deep strike tactics that the Genestealer Cult are known for, so it has very skewed army lists. This is about the bikes and the ridge runners and the trucks. It likes to play rather aggressively, with a lot of speed controlling the table for its units to score victory points, while also wearing even the toughest enemy units down over time, instead of smashing them all at once with Biosanctic Aberrants or Host of Ascension Neophyte blocks. It plays differently, but for some people this is the only way to play Genestealer Cult. Let's drive!
Oh, there will be resistance to our ascension, of course! But if the blood of unbelievers must flow, then these streets will run red!
Like many parts of the Genestealer Cult Codex, the detachment rulers change from what is written in the Codex. In the Codex, you doubled the objective control of mounted units and vehicle units, so you'd have objective control 6 Ridge Runners. When the weakness of the Genestealer Cult Codex was known, this was picked up as the best detachment and played competitively. As it was too good, this was toned down to add 1 to the objective control of those units, as long as they're not battle-shocked. Your Ridge Runners and your Rock Grinder are objective control 4, the truck is objective control 3. The bikes are objective control 2, similar to our battle line units like the Neophytes and the Acolytes. And I don't mean to alarm you, but the Tectonic Frag Drill goes up to objective control 1. It's a vehicle, it can hold objectives! Don't include it! It's silly, but if you wanted to know which detachment was the Tectonic Frag Drill detachment, it's this one. The change to the detachment rule does nothing to change how this detachment is played. And the second part of the detachment rule is that you get sticky objectives on your Atlan Jackals. At the end of your command phase, if an Atlan Jackal unit is in range of an objective marker, that's your objective marker, until your opponent's level of control is greater than yours at the end of any phase. Sticky objectives is something we already had on the Neophytes, but with this ability on the bikes, with their inherent Scout 9, you can control objectives in the middle of the board before the game starts. That's very valuable in all the ways to play. In Crusade, sometimes the missions can be scored in every turn. So if you can start the game controlling an objective, brilliant, and then continue to control it. In tournament play, if you go first, you control the middle of the table and you don't need to commit any units. After that scout move, your bikes can move into cover or move back towards your deployment zone in turn 1 and you keep hold of those objectives. No exchanging 2 or 3 units at a time as you go to score some points and then the unit is killed and replaced by your opponent's unit. And then you go out and kill their units with another wave and are killed in turn. The objective are ours. If the enemy takes the objectives, we can kill their units and the bikes can control the objectives again. And if they get shot, we still control the objective. And with boosted objective control, the bikes are better able to control the objectives. The detachment rule gives you no boost to damage. Nothing for that. That is because this detachment is not about damage. More than other detachments, it's a representative of the Genestealer Cult playstyle as a whole. You survive or outlast the enemy, you inconvenience the enemy, you win on victory points, not by wiping out the enemy force. And with our resurgence points, it is hard to completely wipe us off the table. It can be done, but it is harder to do than to other factions. Lots of competitive players saw that when we went from the Index to the Codex, the direct damage of Genestealer Cult units was reduced, and winning was going to be done by holding objectives and preventing the enemy from scoring them, and a detachment that increases the objective control is a good choice. This detachment is also speed. Not the film, but sort of the film. The fast units are the ones that are benefiting, and there are a lot of reactive moves possible to get even more movement. 12-inch move, I mean, I'm not super used to using movement in the movement phase. I've played with Metamorphs moving in the enemy shooting phase, or other units in the Xenocreed congregation, or Aberrants moving long distances as they pile in the fight phase in the Biosanctic Brood Surge. With reactive moves from Stratagems and the Jackal Alphas shoot and move, You would think they were riding cows if they're gaining movement. I'm very funny. For transparency, this is my least played detachment, as long-term fans will know, but I have about a 50%-ish win rate. That's higher than the average from tournament results, but it's not what you'd expect from a faction expert like me. I can make it work, but I am better with all of the other ways of playing Genestealer Cult, including Brood Brothers. But I have a big enough bike handle on this detachment that I can give you good advice. The enhancements are very cheap, but they're also not particularly great. Serpentine Tactics. Now, unless you have 10 Jackal Bikers with the Sniper Alphas, the biker shooting is not that special. It's like half a neophyte squad. Oh, the mining laser hits on a 4+ and has better strength, but it's nothing to write home about and tell your mother. You have to have a Jackal Alphas in the squad to use it, because it's an enhancement and in 10th edition enhancements go on characters. It allows the unit to fall back and still shoot. This does give you extra movement because the Jackal Alphas has the ability to move the unit again after shooting, but you're not doing a lot of damage. The unit can fall back and still use its demolition run ability anyway. That is a big part of their damage. This enhancement doesn't change if you're able to use a grenade. The grenade stratagem isn't about being eligible to shoot. You cannot use the grenade stratagem if you fell back. What you can benefit from is having the Jackal Alphas fall back, shoot the enemy, hit the enemy, and then use their ability to have other units reroll hit rolls of 1 against them. Then move. But if you have 10 points spare and you have a Jackal Alphas in a unit, it's a good enough enhancement to use. Cartographic Data Leech is a better use of 10 points, but on a different character, one that can go in a transport. We only have firing deck 6 on the Rock Grinder and the Goliath Truck, and the truck rule wants you to get out of the transport to reroll wound rolls. The enhancement wants you to stay in the transport. While the bearer is embarked within the transport, each time that transport is selected to shoot, improve the ballistic skill of weapons fired from the firing deck by 1. It's not much use on a Rock Grinder, as a Rock Grinder transports 6 models, and the units of 5 don't have good shooting, and the Acolytes with Hand Flamers don't need a bonus to hit, and they can't use their demo charges while within a vehicle because it's a one-shot weapon. And at the start of 10th edition, the rules got very confused as to who is firing a one-shot weapon if it's shot from the firing deck. Is it the vehicle? Is it the models inside? How many times can you get in and out and fire a one-shot weapon when it hasn't actually been fired? So no firing one-shot weapons from the firing deck anymore. That's the rule. Having this enhancement on a character inside a truck is okay if you have 10 Neophytes and a Benefactus and a Reductus. You can fire at most 1 gun per model, and it's only 6 guns. So you put the Cartographic Data Leech on a Benefactus to get 2 Doom Beams that are hitting on a 2+. If the hazardous test is failed, the hazardous test is taken on the truck, and the truck will lose 3 wounds rather than the Benefactus exploding. Remember that with firing deck, it is the vehicle that is shooting the weapons. So you have a Brain Lady, a Bomb Lady, and some Neophytes in a Goliath truck, and then you've got a Grenade Launcher hitting on 3s, a Mining Laser, a Seismic Cannon hitting on 4s, those 2 Brain Shots, the indirect fire bombs of the Reductus Saboteur, and then a Weber from the Neophytes, but that auto hits. To really make it shine, grab your Achilles Ridge Runner, and they can spot targets with the Crossfire for the Goliath truck. If you have a Survey Auger attached to the Ridge Runner, now all of the bonus weaponry that's firing from that firing deck has Ignore Cover, an extra point of armor penetration, +1 ballistic skill, and maybe you want to use close range shootout. Any one vehicle within 18 inches of the enemy gets lethal hits. So the Seismic Cannons and a Frag Grenade from the Grenade Launcher are looking a little bit tastier. Although the close range shootout is not a stratagem you will usually use, as other stratagems keep your units alive and moving, which better suits the strengths of this detachment. So maybe forget that stratagem. It's an option. Another thing to forget that I keep being asked about, and please stop asking me about it, is putting 3 Benefactus in a bus, in a truck. One of them has Cartographic Data Leech. So this battle bus can fire 6 las cannon shots hitting on a 2+. But you're looking at about 300 points for that on a transport with all the defense of a Rhino. You would get to fire it once, and then the truck's blown up by something, and the benefits, the not dying from hazardous, the +1 ballistic skill, all go away. You have 3 easily killed Benefactus. That's some easy to pick up victory points for the enemy getting assassination, or just kill enemy units to get points. Stop suggesting it as an idea. Try it if you want. It fails far more often than it does anything valuable, and your army is worse off for the point sink of including it. Have it on a Reductus Saboteur riding along with Neophytes, and enjoy that this enhancement is 10 points. Starfall Shells is also 10 points. It's a Genestealer Cult mounted unit, which has to be the Jackal Alphas. In the shooting phase, after you've shot, pick an enemy unit that's hit by one of your attacks, if you can hit, and until the start of your next shooting phase, each enemy model in that unit is at -1 to their hit roll. That is ranged attacks, that is melee attacks. Unfortunately, it only works if the Jackal Alphas hits and they hit on a 3+. If you have a Jackal Alphas and you have the spare points, yes, you can use it. It can be a good one-off shot, but it doesn't track with the Jackal Alphas ability to hit an enemy and then other units in your army reroll hit rolls of 1 if they target the same enemy. You're applying a malus to the enemy attacks, which isn't what you need if your plan is to kill them with your other units. If you really thought a -1 to hit is a very useful thing to apply to the enemy, take a Genestealer Cult Magus. That is -1 to hit, and it works on a 2+, and you don't need line of sight. But once again, if you have 10 points spare, if you have a Jackal Alphas that doesn't have an enhancement, you can put the two together in a way that means your Jackal Alphas is slightly better. Sure, it doesn't gel well with the reroll hit rolls of 1, but it's an extra thing you can do. If you can hit with the sniper rifle. I just can't. Assault Commando is a more, okay, this is a good one, this is interesting, I can make this work. Each time the bearer's unit makes a range attack, if it disembarked from a transport this turn, you can reroll the hit roll. It's good for a Primus with Acolytes who have demo charges. Full rerolls to hit from the enhancement, +1 to hit from the Primus, and full rerolls to wound against enemies on objectives. Or if the Goliath truck shot the same enemy unit, then you get to fully reroll the wound roll. Demo charges can then do something. Usually they miss completely. If you want good demo charges, this is probably the only way to get it in the Genestealer Cult Codex. But beyond that, there's not a great many places where it's worth it. You could have this on a character that's joined 10 Neophytes, but do we really want to try buffing that few models? And they're Neophytes. Their baseline shooting isn't stellar. 20 Neophytes can't benefit because they can't fit in our vehicles. But with a Benefictus, 10 Neophytes and their 2 brained las cannon shots with lethal hits on the unit from the Benefictus, and the ability to reroll hit rolls to try and get those lethal hits, and then rerolling all wound rolls because of the Goliath truck ability, and it's probably far too many points to ever be worth it. Neophytes are there to control objectives. They're more objective control 2 bodies with the sticky objectives rule, in their case planned generations in the making. When the vehicle is destroyed, the Neophytes spill out onto the nearest objective. They're battle shocked for now, but they will recover at the start of your turn, and any casualties that were caused from the exploding vehicle can be recovered with the cult icon. Don't try and make the shooting of 10 Neophytes better, it isn't worth it. Especially when you have to pay for a character to go with them, and then pay for the enhancement, and you're looking at 65 to 95 points. It's not necessary. If you have 15 points to spare, you could put Assault Commando on a Reductus to get the most out of her once per game demolition charge. It hits on a 3, it's a better demolition charge than the Acolytes, it also doesn't have hazardous so she won't blow up, and it will also help her remote mines. You can fire more than one ranged weapon at once. She can't join any units, so she won't be able to give these bonuses to anyone else. Oh, and you don't get rerolls on the grenade stratagem. The 4 pluses you roll for the grenade stratagem are not hit rolls, nor wound rolls, so you won't reroll them. We'll get to which enhancements I've included in army lists so you can see if they're taken, where they're taken, how they may be taken. There will be 3 army lists at the end of this video, but we've got to do the stratagems. You know how videos like this go. You've been watching through January. We've got enhancements, we've got stratagems, we've got the units you're going to take. Oh boy, guess which ones they are in the Outlander Claw. And then we do the army lists and the tactics of those army lists. The stratagems are very reactive, very defense focused. There is nothing for the non-detachment specific units. If you are not a mounted unit or a vehicle, you're not going to be using any of the stratagems. This is a very focused detachment. It takes the theme of the Rusted Claw Cult. They were very good for their endurance, durability, and also known for living out in the ash wastes of various places. The first stratagem we're looking at reflects that, Devoted Crew. You use it in your opponent's shooting phase or either player's fight phase, just after the enemy unit has selected their targets, one of your rock grinders or your Goliath trucks that's going to be targeted. Enemy attacks that wound your vehicle are at -1 to their damage characteristic, to a minimum of 1. You can't be immune to damage, rules commentary says so. And it lasts against all enemy attacks, not against one enemy unit, and it lasts for the entire phase. This is most effective when you're hit by damage to attacks, like Orc Looters or massed plasma guns. Is the enemy still going to overcharge their plasma guns to get an extra point of armor penetration? Probably not, now that you've used that stratagem. Damage to Blade Guard swords. Well, now they're forced to be damage 1. It makes the enemy have to overcommit resources to kill a relatively cheap vehicle. I've kept a Rock Grinder alive on 1 wound against a Power Fist and Chain Fist Chaos Terminator squad, and then I killed 3 of them with the Rock Grinder's drill, and then, because of the boosted objective control from the detachment rule, I outscored the survivors and their lord. This can swing a lot of victory points when used at the right time. It also lets you charge enemies to stop them from scoring primary missions with your boosted objective control, because you'll still be alive, or you can tie them up in combat, which stops them from performing actions. That will also stop the amount of secondary missions they can do. Deft maneuvering is the other side of that, but it's for the Ridge Runner and the Jackal Bikers. In your opponent's shooting phase only, a Ridge Runner or Outlander Jackal squad that was picked as the target of enemy attacks, until the end of the phase, models in your unit have a 4+ invulnerable save. That, along with stealth, which the Jackal Bikers have naturally, or free stealth from a flare launcher on a Ridge Runner, so that smokescreen which gives you stealth and the benefit of cover, that is an annoying unit to take down compared to what it should be. Just be aware that that stacking won't work in 11th edition, where you can't use 2 stratagems on the same unit in the same phase, so you can't use the smokescreen ability on top of deft maneuvering. It would be one or the other. Despite the claim that nothing can endure in 10th edition, it can or at least endure far more than it should for the cost of the unit and 1 command point. And it lasts until the end of the phase, so if there's more than 1 unit attacking you, you still get the 4+ invulnerable save. If the enemy wants to shoot through a bike squad and charge another unit behind them that are on an objective, all you need to do is survive the shooting phase, and the enemy can only charge the bikes. A 4+ invulnerable save is better than their regular armor save of 5+, so it's an improvement against even low armor penetration shooting. Usually you use this stratagem on a Ridge Runner, as you can see the high damage, high AP attacks coming, and they tend to be few in number. Like 2 las cannon shots, if you can save even 1 of them, you can save the Ridge Runner. Save the Ridge Runner, save the game. Unfortunately, it's the shooting phase only, so it cannot help you in close combat. Now let's do the movement stratagems. Encircling the prey. It's a pretty standard leave and return stratagem, which some people call uppy downies. One of your Jackal Biker squads or any of your vehicles, not in engagement range, and within 9 inches of the battlefield edge, you remove it from the battlefield, put it into strategic reserves, and then in any of your future turns, you can arrive at the end of your movement phase and be set up 6 inches from the board edge. Depending on the layout of the objectives, like on the Hammer and Anvil map, that can mean you can arrive from the board edge and be straight onto an objective. Or you can get to ones that are a bit further away with the Jackal Alphas. They can shoot, then the unit can move onto the objective. Demolition Run doesn't trigger after arriving from strategic reserve, because that counts as you doing a normal move, but you have not done a normal move. It's a really bad version of Games Workshop English. They need a setup move, like keyword. The point is you can't move further in the movement phase, but only in the movement phase. Use it on a truck if they would have to cross a difficult area that has enemy big guns pointed at it. Get around them. If a Ridge Runner needs a better angle to deliver crossfire, leave the board and arrive near the edge where you will be free to fire those mining lasers or deliver that crossfire bonus. Use it on turn 2 or turn 3, I may use it then. But if I don't, maybe I will, ooh. And my opponent has to keep their whole deployment zone secured. Every point of it will need to have one of their units within 9 inches, otherwise we can turn up there. That's not something they're usually willing to risk. So having this stratagem as an option can be beneficial even if you don't use it, but make sure that your opponent knows that you have it. Rapid Feint, another one of our defensive stratagems, based on movement. In your opponent's movement phase, after an enemy unit has done a normal move, an advanced move, or a fallback move, This does not include disembarking from transports or arriving from strategic reserves. Those are not normal moves. They just count as normal moves, but they're not normal moves. But one of your Ridge Runners or Jackal units within 9 inches of that enemy unit that just moved, advanced, or fell back can make a normal move of up to 6 inches. You can do all the usual things that you do when you have extra movement. Get more objective control onto an objective. Make a charge harder or impossible for the enemy. If you are more than 12 inches away, they cannot pick you as a charge target. Move away from an objective that you've already got sticky with the rapid takeover ability. That's still your objective, you move away from it, you're still going to get primary points, and now the enemy doesn't have a nearby unit to charge. It's extra movement, use it as you wish. And then, as in every detachment, we have our Shuffle the Cult ambush markers around. Shuffle, shuffle, along shadowed trails. This has been updated since the Codex. It's much looser on which cult ambush marker we use. It's any of them. Any phase just after an enemy unit ends a move within 9 inches of one of your cult ambush markers, which is enough to remove it, set that cult ambush marker up anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from enemy units. Unlike in pretty much every other detachment that has one of these, you will end up using it at some point in the Outlander Claw. Or at least you're more likely to use it here than in, like, the Biosanctic Brood Surge, because we care if we lose cult ambush markers near the board edge. Jackal bikers need to have a cult ambush marker there. It doesn't matter if they're using cult ambush to arrive in your turn using strategic reserves of the updated cult ambush rules, or if they're arriving in your opponent's turn using the cult ambush markers. Either way, you still need to have a cult ambush marker near the board edge. They've got to have that cult ambush marker to land on. So we need a cult ambush marker. It can be a good opportunity to re-decide where your unit will appear. Oftentimes, the cult ambush markers are removed in the enemy movement phase. At the end of the enemy movement phase, we can come back with a cult ambush marker. Have they left part of the board open? Uh-oh, time to capitalize on that mistake. And the 6th stratagem, which is the only offensive stratagem, the only one that has to be used in your own turn, all of the others can be used in the enemy turn, close range shootout. One of your mounted units, so your Atalan Jackals, or a cult vehicle, so like a truck, Ridge Runner, Rock Grinder, ranged weapons equipped by models have lethal hits as long as they target an enemy within 18 inches. This will apply to the firing deck of the trucks, but there's not enough bullets to be worth it. Not from Jackals, not from 10 neophytes in a truck, even with the many truck guns and their cache of demolition charges. You're not rolling enough dice for lethal hits to be worth it. Sure, they successfully wound, then there's the enemy armor save. Spend the command point on tank shock or grenades. That will do more damage, and that ignores enemy toughness, armor save, and invulnerable saves. In all my games with the Outlander Claw, I think the stratagems I use the most are Devoted Crew and Deft Maneuvering to keep the vehicles alive. Maybe Rapid Feint if the opportunity is there for something useful to happen, maybe along shadowed trails if the situation comes up, but I find that most enemies know you don't need to take out the cult ambush markers because unlike in the Index, it doesn't destroy one of our units. I use Encircling the Prey if there's something valuable I'll get from it. Like, oh my, there's a lot of chain fists in front of this Goliath truck. Well, let's just get out of there. And don't use close range shootout. But really the most used stratagems in this detachment are grenades and tank shock. You also want command points to redraw secondary missions that are unsuitable in the 2025-2026 mission deck. Wipe out a horde? I don't think we have the weapons, unless pure strains or acolytes with hand flamers can get to the enemy unit en masse. Better to redraw for one about table quarters or controlling objectives. The Outlander Claw does that better. So let's talk about the units you're going to take. This isn't a full-on tier list of where everything lands, whether it's good or bad, based on their role within the Outlander Claw detachment, but we'll talk about the best ones and often suggested alternatives. Do you want to buy any Genestealer Cult models? I have affiliates and they have very competitive prices compared to going through Games Workshop. Well, it's cheaper than going through Games Workshop, but they are very competitive prices otherwise. Get discounted Genestealer Cult models, and that helps my channel in the process because they give me money. And money is what keeps the wheels on the Christian von Carmian truck. The Combat Patrol is a pretty good option. Get Jackal Bikers, get a Ridge Runner, get a Jackal Alphas. It's very Outlander Claw themed. That's your good starting point, and we will come back to this box when we get to the army lists. But the units you want. Obviously, you want to take the ones that get the benefit of the detachment rule. The trucks, the Ridge Runners, the trucks with spiky blades on the front that go whir, and the Atalan Jackals. But there are more units you want to consider based on the strengths of the detachment. This detachment is tough. While the Biosanctic Brood Surge has stratagems for the aberrants, this detachment can also take aberrants that are just as tough, plus our other units. The Outlander Claw has stratagems that reduce enemy damage and give our units invulnerable saves. This is about getting victory points and outlasting your opponent while preventing them from getting victory points. That's the main tactic. When you need to kill things, Acolytes with hand flamers for enemy light infantry, Jackal Bikers with their mortal wounds and grenades for mortal wounds, Reductor Saboteur for grenades and mortal wounds, and mining lasers for the bigger threats. But that's mainly to remove enemy units that can score victory points. It's death by 1,000 mortal wounds rather than concentrated firepower or murdering in combat. Pretty much every Outlander Claw detachment army list has units along those lines. Lots of Reductor Saboteurs, Acolytes, Ridge Runners, Bikes, you get it. Okay, let's go through the units and talk about why they're good. What are they going to do? Ridge Runners. They have a weaker defense profile than the trucks, but have a natural objective control 3 instead of the objective control 2 of trucks, or enemy rhinos, which we then boost. This is important for holding objectives. With objective control 4, that can hold against 3 heavy dudes like the Melter Gravis Marines, Voltan on Stilts, Blade Guard. In 10th edition, while you can, stack the 4+ invulnerable save defensive stratagem with a flare launcher for smoke, -1 to be hit, invulnerable save, and also the benefit of cover. The Ridge Runners have Scout. Now, you're not going to send them up onto the objectives, only the Jackal Bikers have the sticky objectives, but you can scout into a better position before turn 1. In this detachment, more than the other detachments, because there are stratagems you can use on a Ridge Runner unit, I have units of 2. Defense stratagems apply to the whole unit. And you can also then chain crossfire. So you have one lone Ridge Runner with a mortar and a spotter. You have the spotter because if you roll the minimum number of shots and you only hit on a 4+ or a 5+ through indirect fire, you might not get that hit, so you wouldn't get crossfire. Have the spotter. Survey Augur is another option. But the lone Ridge Runner hits the unit that the unit of 2 Ridge Runners will shoot at, so that when they fire their big lasers, they get an extra point of armor penetration. Their stubbers can fire at something else to pass on the crossfire bonus again, or they could fire at the same target as the heavy mining lasers. Then they have an extra point of armor penetration. We want Goliath trucks. They can sit on an objective and they have okay objective control. They're also a relatively cheap unit, slightly difficult to remove unit, especially when it comes to infantry small arms. They can complete secondary missions. They can sit on objectives for the primary mission. And they transport units like Acolytes with hand flamers, or Neophytes who are going to jump out, use sticky objectives, have high objective control, or you can transport a combat unit, like Acolytes with mining tools, or Metamorphs. Maybe not Metamorphs, and have Acolytes instead, because then all the units in your army, except for the characters, have high objective control. Keep to the theme of the army. My trucks kept getting charged, more so the enemy slowed them down, or made me use Big Guns Never Tire, which is -1 to hit rolls, including shots from the firing deck, and I can't use the Demolition Cache because it's blast, so the unit inside gets out, the truck falls back and can't shoot. Having Metamorphs inside, they want the bonus that the truck provides. Rerolling those wound rolls. Acolytes with hand flamers have that when attacking any unit on an objective. They can even have a couple of demo charges if you want. You will want to be close to the enemy when you disembark. And their reroll to wound also applies in combat. Acolytes with hand flamers have okay claws. They're like Space Marine chainswords. And you will find that enemies will have to come to your objectives because you use Neophytes and Atlan Jackals to sticky those objectives so they're ours. The enemy will go onto the objectives. The Acolytes will be able to counterattack and get those full rerolls to wound. The Rick Grinder. Rick, that's a cool name. That's what's written in my notes. This is Rick. Rick Grinder. Moves fast, delivers damage. Definitely heterosexual. For the most part, I find rock grinders to be expensive compared to trucks, with a worse unit rule. Enemies falling back, well, they might die. I mean, if it's an enemy vehicle, because if you roll a 1 or a 2, the model is destroyed, regardless of the number of wounds it has. But anything else that wants to fall back will fall back. The rock grinders have a smaller transport capacity than the truck and a much higher cost. However, enemies like tagging my Goliath trucks. They consolidate into me, they charge me because I can't hurt them, and they get more movement with a charge than not charging. They didn't with Rick Grinder and his Rock Grinder. The Rock Grinders are an important counter-attacking unit, and great for the charge of Witness Me! Yes, darling, Daddy's watching. But let's talk about bikes. The Jackal Alphas has the ability to move their unit after shooting. You don't need to hit with any of the shots. As long as one of them could fire, then you have shot, and then the unit can move 6 inches. You can move closer to the enemy after shooting, stop the enemy from moving in their turn. Here's a barrier of bikes in the way. As soon as they became a unit, the bikes have been used to move block. Occasionally to shoot and move, like fire a mining laser and grenade launcher, and then get out of line of sight. This is really the only detachment where you use the Jackal Alphas in a squad. They can give a boost to your other units if you're comboing a bunch of things together to try and kill one enemy unit. Reroll hit rolls of 1. But that's only happening after their unit is shot, so the biker unit they're with won't get that bonus. And a lone Outlander Jackal Alphas doesn't do much. They don't have the objective control to hold objectives. A lone Alpha still gets the +1 objective control from the detachment rule as a bike unit, but they don't get the sticky objectives because they are not keyword Outlander Jackals. Shoot and move still works, but you're better off with a cheaper Sanctus, with a better sniper rifle, lone operative, and a reactive move for free. Right, the Outlander Jackals, their job is to sticky as many of the middle board objectives as you can on the scout moves if you go first. If you don't go first, and there isn't good cover for you to move your bikes up safely, then prioritize being alive over pointless sticky objectives, and then death, and then the enemy just takes the objective. You have some stratagems to keep you alive, because this detachment doesn't have as many options to bring units back from Cult Ambush, because of the number of vehicles that don't have the Cult Ambush rule. There certainly feels like a lack of choice, especially when compared to the Xenocreed congregation that brings back bonus units. So you need to keep units alive over constantly recycling the troops. Bikes have stealth now. -1 to hit is good, but if you rely on that, elimination. Lack of education. The unit is not that tough, and they have a low armor save. At time of recording, and presumably until the end of 10th edition, and maybe some of 11th edition, Cult Ambush is strategic reserves that you can't rapid ingress out of. So the Cult Ambush is something you use if you're returning in the enemy turn. Jackal Bikers appear to be the exception. As I understand it, whether you're coming out of Cult Ambush as if it was strategic reserves, or you're coming from a Cult Ambush marker on the enemy turn, you have to be near the Cult Ambush marker, as their unit ability also specifies that the token is removed. With that in mind, whenever you put any unit into Cult Ambush, but plan to use Deep Strike to return them to the battlefield rather than the Cult Ambush marker, put the Cult Ambush marker near the board edge for your Jackals. The Resurgence markers are not tied to one unit and are not removed when you place the unit on the table from Deep Striking from Cult Ambush. So with at least one spare token, you can give your Jackal Bikers the option of returning on the left flank or the right flank. As long as you're 9 inches from the enemy, it works. Now, when you return, it is 9 inches from the board edge if you're arriving in the enemy turn. That's what the Jackal Bikers rule says, and that's better than the normal outflank, which is 6 inches, because with 9 inches you can get onto the side objectives that are set up to 12 inches from the board edge. So it's an extra good idea to return in the enemy turn with Cult Ambush. Then you can stick the objective at the start of your turn and move away. They can do a decent amount of damage, not so much from shooting but from their demolition run ability. After moving, after advancing, or falling back once per battle round, you can roll a dice for every Outlander Jackal's keyword model in the unit. The Wolf Quad has the keyword. The Jackal Alphas does not. So you roll either 5 or 10 dice, depending on your unit size, and you can get a maximum of 6 mortal wounds, 1 for every 4+ rolled. So I prefer units of 5 because I will never reach that cap, whereas units of 10 can mean wasted dice. Also, a unit of 10 costs a disproportionate number of resurgence points. And Demo Run is very flexible on when you can use it. You can use it while battle shocked, unlike grenades, which is a stratagem. And unlike grenades, you can use it on enemies in engagement range of other Genestealer Cult units. You can put the mortal wounds almost wherever you want. Move, blow up an enemy unit that was in combat with one of your units, that unit is now free. They can move and shoot and stuff. Don't expect their shooting to do anything. A unit of 10 bikers is like a squad of 10 neophytes, and you know how weak that is. You have a few weapon options. The Flamer, the Incinerator, does the most consistent damage, but we rarely need more help in clearing the equivalent of neophytes. Pretty much every unit in our army can do that well. The Wolf Quad Heavy Stubber has Assault, which we don't need. You would have to really pre-plan that you were going to move the unit and advance and still be able to shoot, and then with the Jackal Alphas move another 6 inches. That's not something that comes up organically in the middle of the game. Better to have the Mining Laser for the ability to punch up and try and deal with knights that have high objective control on each model. The Wolf Quad Mining Laser is better than the Neophyte's Mining Laser for its hit chance and its strength. For every 5 Atlan Jackal models, 2 of them can have power weapons. Good. And you can have 1 grenade launcher for every unit of 5. You can have a power weapon and grenade launcher on the same model. It makes it easier to pick out which one to remove last. And the power weapon doesn't have to be held in the hand, it could be attached to the side of the bike as it's strapped onto a pack. So there is at least one arm holding onto the bike while the other arm holds the grenade launcher. You can get the bikes cheaper in the Combat Patrol box and the Combat Patrol magazine. In the UK, we recently finished the Genestealer Cult issues, which are yet to come out in other countries at time of recording. Don't forget those affiliate links for the Combat Patrol box. Neophytes are a staple unit in this detachment. You put them in the trucks. They can shoot out the roof with their best guns, firing deck 6. If the truck is destroyed, it spills the Neophytes out onto the objective. You are battle shocked, you will recover from battle shock, you will recover lost models with your cult icon, and then you have even more objective control. This detachment wants to have a lot of objective control. This is part of why I prefer Acolytes over Metamorphs in this detachment. The staple character of this detachment is the Reductus Saboteur. You've got free grenades. Pop out of a truck, throw the free grenades. Throw their once per game demo charge. The truck has taken you into range of the enemy. Take the objective with whatever else, and leave the Reductus on the objective so the enemies either face a 9-inch charge to try and take her out, or risk stepping on a very good mortal wound mine. She has lone operatives, so she can't be shot over 12 inches. Other units you could take that aren't necessarily staples in the Outlander Claw army lists. You could have a Benefactus. You don't have to have them attached to a Neophyte squad. The Neophytes don't really get anything from lethal hits, and if they're within a truck using firing deck, you don't get the lethal hits from the character being attached to the unit because they're not attached to the truck. The truck is firing the guns with the firing deck rule, not the unit inside. No bonuses apply, no abilities can be used while you're inside a transport, the exception being the cartographic data leech. As the Benefactus tends to be just 70 points more for a couple of las cannon shots, I think you're better off having more Ridge Runners as they have mining lasers, which are better. Not as good at hitting, but you get more shots. And the Ridge Runner does so much more. A Locust makes a good leader for a unit of Acolytes, usually Acolytes with mining tools rather than Acolytes with hand flamers, but they move up behind the bikes as a second line. Use Heroic Intervention, and then because the Locust has fight first, you will fight first, even though the enemy unit charged. You can have a Sanctus Sniper. I think the lone operative you want is a Reductus Saboteur. It's more precision sniper shots to try and finish enemy characters injured by a Jackal Alpha sniper, but I wouldn't try that. It's cheaper infiltrate than a Reductus Saboteur, and they can reactive move if they have the sniper rifle. More movement, it's consistent with the theme of the Outlander Claw detachment. And you will need units to do actions on objectives. The sniper is a cheap one, and they can start right next to an objective. The Primus is sometimes used in the Outlander Claw. You cannot use their decoys and misdirection ability if they start in a transport. You can't use any abilities if you're in a transport. But you can use abilities if you start in reserves. Sitting in a box on the battlefield, no abilities. 10 miles away from the battlefield, oh yeah, you can use abilities. The usual reason to have a Primus is so you can deploy a unit of 5 or 10 pure strains strung out in the middle of the board to stop enemy infiltrators from starting near there. But in the Outlander Claw, where movement blocking is done more by the bikers, you don't need to have as many pure strains or redeploy the pure strains. But I do like having pure strains. You still want to infiltrate. You still want to block the enemy from taking the objectives. Often there is one objective closer to your side of the board than your opponent's, and you can have a line of pure strains stopping fast enemies from taking that objective. Then bikes or neophytes can use their sticky objective rule on that objective at your leisure. It keeps enemy infiltrators away. The Outlander Claw does really well if you go first, or badly if you go second. The pure strains mitigate some of that, which scouting alone cannot help. Sometimes the pure strains get left alone, and they can complete actions and hold the objective from out of line of sight. Aberrants can be a good anti-marine melee unit. though I prefer Metamorphs who also have damage 2, or I will use Acolytes with mining tools who have damage 3. If you want Aberrants in a truck or a rock grinder, the same tactic will work better in the Biosanctic Brood Surge. Aberrants are slow, and though they deal damage, the damage dealt by this detachment is more mortal wound in theme. Aberrants are tough, but our vehicles have good defense and are more valuable. Better to get a rock grinder and then put some acolytes inside that are going to complete missions instead of having aberrants. And you don't have to put something inside the Goliath rock grinder. It's not a dedicated transport, just a transport, so it won't explode at the start of the game. The Goliath trucks have to have something inside. Now we're going to move and talk about the tactics and gameplay advice for the Outlander Claw. I think you're getting the feeling of it as we're going through. We want to control objectives, you win the game by controlling the objectives. It is not about destroying your opponent. You bring down some small units that would score victory points for the enemy, the equivalent of acolytes. Use acolytes for that. Then you can outscore the enemy. You can bring down monsters and vehicles by concentrating firepower with ridge runners and bikers using their demolition run. You have the speed to get them into position to do this. But it's mostly about objective control. Sticky objectives with the bikes and parking in front of the enemy so they can't get past you for at least one turn. There are usually only 4 turns in the game where you can score the primary mission. And you might be able to endure with -1 damage stratagems on your vehicles and 4+ invulnerable save stratagems. Turn 1 is always the same in the Outlander Claw. Move the bikes. Move block with the bikes. They are cheap, they are disposable, and they can come back with the resurgence points. 2 resurgence points for a squad of 5. Normally I prefer to return units that can deep strike instead of the bikes, because other units don't have to return at the board edge, but the bikes are a key unit in this detachment, so bring them back. You don't have to block the enemy movement right away. You can scout and sticky and then move back. You have the objectives, the enemy comes to you for your counterattack with acolytes in trucks. We control the objectives, but we're not on the objectives for enemy bonuses like a Lehman Russ getting rerolls against us, or Necron Immortals bonus, or the Chaos Legionaries getting to reroll wound rolls in combat. I prefer to hold my opponent back with disposable bikes and pure strains, and put units on objectives to have units there for secondary missions and actions. At least stand near the objectives. But to know how effective this is going to be, you have to ask your opponent how far their units can move, which of their units can fly, are there any extra ways of getting movement, so we don't leave any exposed objectives that can be easily claimed. Now army lists, so that brings together all of the things we've been saying about the units and about the tactics. And I've got 3 army lists for you. 1000 points is a good level for a specialized detachment. Sticky objectives and better objective control is amazing at 1000 points. You can control objectives with a small number of units while at the same time you move ahead and attack the enemy. You can stop them from holding objectives while simultaneously, even though you're nowhere near them, you hold the objectives. The first army list is based on the Combat Patrol box. There's a Jackal Alphas with 5 Atalan Jackals, an Achilles Ridge Runner, 5 Acolytes with auto pistols and mining tools, 5 Acolytes with hand flamers and demo charges. That's your first Combat Patrol box, and there's a Goliath truck. Then from a second Combat Patrol box, 5 Atalan Jackals, an Achilles Ridge Runner, 5 Acolytes with hand flamers, 5 Acolytes with hand flamers, another Goliath truck, a Reductor Saboteur, and 5 Pure Strain Genestealers. To make this army, you want 2 of the Combat Patrol boxes, 2 of the Goliath trucks, and 5 Pure Strains. You can make the Reductor Saboteur out of one of the neophytes that are on the back of the truck, and arms from Acolytes and Jackal Bikers. There is a Biker arm holding a mine. There is a pair of Acolyte arms holding a detonator. And the remote mine can be made from any of the satchel packs of the Bikers. If you didn't want to spend as much money, don't get the Pure Strains and instead include the other Jackal Alphas from the second Combat Patrol box, and give each of the Jackal Alphas one of the 10-point enhancements. One has Serpentine Tactics, the other has Starfall Shells and can operate alone, harassing the enemy. It's an army list that has a lot of speed. Keep the fighting around the edges of the enemy deployment zone. Keep control of the center of the board. So the Atalan Jackals with the Jackal Alphas, we start one of the Jackal models on the home objective to start sticking it in the first turn. You may be able to scout and also sticky a mid-board objective, so you are on 2 objectives at the start of the game. They will become yours. We do this with the squad with the Jackal Alphas, as they're going to be further back, but in the first turn they can move, they can shoot, and keep up with the rest of the army as the Jackal Alphas gives you a 6-inch move after shooting. If the enemy army had deep striking units, or they had stratagems like encircling the prey that allowed them to leave and return to the battlefield, leave 5 auto pistol acolytes on the home objective. From the second turn, or the first turn if you go second, they can try and generate more command points, so you can keep using defensive stratagems or grenades. Their ability only starts to work at the start of the command phase if you control the objective, and at the very start of the very first turn if you go first, no objectives are controlled until the end of that first phase. One of the Achilles Ridge Runners is there for crossfire if you need it, but its job is to hide and wait for the enemy to get out of their transports, wait for things to be exposed, and then blast them with mining lasers. In coordination with other troops, it cannot destroy something by itself. I wouldn't even trust it to destroy a rhino. The Goliath truck is one such support, as well as the troops inside it. So the acolytes with auto pistols, if they're going to be inside the truck, if you don't need them on the home objective, you have the 5 acolytes with auto pistols and the 5 acolytes with hand flamers in one of the Goliath truck, because that gives you the tools for the job. If a light vehicle like a rhino is there, send in the auto pistol and mining tool acolytes. Their damage 3 anti-vehicle weapons will work rather well. If there's light infantry to fight, disembark the hand flamer acolytes. After you've taken an objective or cleared it of enemies, leave the auto pistol unit behind to generate command points, assuming there's nothing else nearby that they want to get into. The other Outlander Jackal squad scouts towards an objective, they go and hold up the enemy. Slide those bikes sideways right up to the enemy deployment zone, and they can't easily get out to score objectives. The other Achilles Ridge Runner is going to be supporting trucks and acolytes to cause more damage with crossfire. I still want the big mining laser, and I'll have a flare launcher on each of them, so if they're under attack, they can use smokescreen for free. Keep the Ridge Runners alive, you keep crossfire alive, you can continually cause damage with this detachment. In the other Goliath truck, there are 2 lots of acolytes with hand flamers. The reason I have 2 units of 5 rather than 1 squad of 10 is so you can drop off 1 unit at a time to do actions or hold an objective if you need to. Or I only have 1 unit of 5 in the truck, and the other 5 are in reserves in deep strike so that they can land wherever they're needed, like into the enemy deployment zone if there is space. The squad you might start in reserve does not want demolition charges. It has 4 hand flamers and a cult icon. I swear by the cult icon, if the enemy is only able to kill 3 of your acolytes, you might bring back all of them at the start of your turn and be on full health. The other squad of 5 can have 2 hand flamers, an icon, and 2 demolition charges. You'll be jumping out quite close to the enemy, unfortunately only hitting on 5s with the demolition charges. It's not something you can rely on, but it's something you can use. A more reliable demolition charge is the Reductus Saboteur. She rides in the truck with the hand flame acolytes, she jumps out and throws her free grenades and her demolition charge alongside the other acolytes. And the Pure Strain Genestealers infiltrate onto an objective that your Jackal bikers are not going to go for in the first turn. So there is potential between the Pure Strains and the 2 squads of Jackals to fully control no man's land in the first turn and keep it that way. Score victory points. Keep the enemy held back. If you can stop them scoring in turn 2 and turn 3, and you've scored in the first 3 turns, you're going to win the game. But we're gonna have more troops than them, or we should do. Spend resurgence points on any of the 5-man units. The bikes, the Pure Strains, the acolytes, all are 2 resurgence points of your 6 resurgence points. Rather than thinking, this is the bike detachment, so I need to bring back bikes, whatever dies first, bring it back to keep up the pressure on the enemy. Hold them back so you keep scoring victory points and they don't. Everything in your army may die, but that doesn't matter. The cult wants victory points. Expend lives, if you have to please the Patriarch. This next 1000 point list is not as tied to the combat patrol, and I can have some more of the units that I like. Starting with Big Hammer Lady, an Abominant, and 5 acolytes with hand flamers, 2 of them with demo charges. I don't use demo charges enough. It's more fun to have a go with the demo charges, and they still have their claws. The claws are just as good as ever. They're all in a Goliath Rock Grinder. There's a Reductus Saboteur with Cartographic Data Leech, 10 Neophytes, a Goliath truck, 2 squads of 5 Outlander Jackals, 2 separate Ridge Runners, 5 Pure Strain Genestealers, and 5 acolytes with auto pistols. Big Hammer Lady and the Hand Flamers and the Big Rock Grinder with the big mining laser go and deal with the biggest, toughest enemies. You point at it and go. The Rock Grinder is good, If the enemy is too numerous for the Rock Grinder's attacks, get the Acolytes out, have the Acolytes use their Hand Flamers, have the Acolytes charge. If you can do this to an enemy on an objective, you get full rerolls to the wound roll on the Hand Flamer attacks and the Claw attacks. For bigger threats, like a Demon Prince or a Hellbrute, get the Abominant out and multi-charge with the Rock Grinder. That can take any Overwatch that may be there, and then charge in with the Abominant. That assumes that you haven't moved with the Rock Grinder before disembarking. You would have to disembark, then move both of them, then charge. While the Rock Grinder is going off and killing stuff, the truck with the Neophytes and the Reductus Saboteur is there to reinforce objectives. There is a lot of objective control from 10 Neophytes and a truck to drop onto an objective, and the Neophytes have their planned generations in the making to do sticky objectives. They're not going to deal the greatest amount of damage, so the Reductus is there to help clear the objective for them. Cartographic Data Leech is used while inside the transport, +1 ballistic skill, and then when she gets out, free grenades and a demo charge. The Neophytes can then get back into the truck and drive off after using a planned generations in the making, while the Reductus can stick around to complete missions and use her remote explosives to fire indirectly, if she isn't called upon to perform an action. There is a lot of indirect fire commonly found in Outlander Claw army lists. Part of this is the Reductus, partly from the Achilles Ridge Runner with the Mortar. Wherever the enemy is, whatever they are attacked by, the Mortar of the Ridge Runner can provide crossfire and more damage to enemies. Crossfire for the Rock Grinder team is very helpful, especially for the Acolytes with Hand Flamers. AP-1 Hand Flamers, AP-2 Claws. I have a spotter on that Ridge Runner to be more likely to hit, whereas the other Ridge Runner has a mining laser for more direct damage and that flare launcher to help it stick around for a bit longer. In the same phase, I can use deft maneuvering on the Jackal Bikers and still have that smoke screen available to protect the Ridge Runner, because you can't use the same stratagem more than once per phase. The 5 Acolytes with mining tools stay on the home objective. They do the usual thing, try and generate command points. Generally be there to stop enemies from deep striking or arriving from strategic reserves and taking your home objective. Also, the Neophytes will start on the home objective. The Reductus is waiting in the truck so that it doesn't explode. There is something in the dedicated transport. The Neophytes will use a planned generations in the making on the home objective and then jump into the truck. They can advance if need be and still embark. And then the truck does its own thing. In that turn, the truck can still shoot the weapons from the firing deck even though the Neophytes advanced. Remember that for rules purposes, the truck is firing the shots, so as long as the truck did not advance, the firing deck guns can still be shot. The reason we do all this is so that the home objective stays under our control if the Acolytes were killed by indirect fire. The Pure Strains and the Jackal Bikers do the same as before, infiltrate or scout to objectives, get in the way of the enemy. That is an army list I've had more success with. After 2 Jackal Biker units and some trucks with troops inside, you're already getting close to the maximum points. The army lists at 2,000 points tend to look a bit more samey because in the Outlander Claw, there's only a few units that are going to benefit from the detachment rule. So you take those units as much as you can, and then take as many of the other good units that work with that again and again. The units I've already mentioned. So in my 2,000 point Outlander Claw list, we have a Primus with Assault Commando, 10 Acolytes with Hand Flamers, and Demo Chargers, a Reductus Saboteur, and a Goliath truck. Now the Reductus Saboteur is going to start in that Goliath truck, while the Primus and their Acolytes start outside of it, so that as the Primus is outside of the truck, they can use their redeploy ability, decoys and misdirection. That allows me to redeploy the 5 Pure Strains and 2 other units that could be in a better position once I know what units the enemy is deployed where. In another Goliath truck are 10 Neophytes and a Reductus Saboteur. We have 3 squads of 5 Atalan Jackals, one of them is led by a Jackal Alphas, 5 Pure Strain Genestealers, a squad of 5 Acolytes with auto pistols and mining tools, a squad of 5 Acolytes with Hand Flamers in a Goliath Rock Grinder, another squad of 5 Acolytes in another Goliath Rock Grinder, 2 squads of Acolytes with Hand Flamers, they're going to deep strike onto the table, they don't have a transport, and 5 Ridge Runners. A squad of 2 Ridge Runners, both with mining lasers, one has a spotter, one has a flare launcher. In the other squad of 2 it's the same, both mining lasers, one with spotter, one with flare launcher, and the last Ridge Runner has a mortar and a survey auger. This is a fun army list because you can start the game with 4 objectives completely under your control, sticky objectives in your command phase. And then you drive around and have fun. So the 3 squads of Jackal Bikers scout towards the central objectives, they take control of those objectives. Once again, the Neophytes start on the home objective, and then they get into the Goliath truck. The Reductor starts in the Goliath truck to stop it from exploding. Then the unusual choice, but I find it is quite effective. The Primus with Assault Commando and 10 Acolytes with Demo Charges, so there's 4 Demo Charges in the squad. When they jump out of the transport, you get full rerolls to hit from Assault Commando, you have full rerolls to wound either from the Goliath truck supporting, or from the Acolyte special rule, so that they can reroll wound rolls against enemies on objectives. You follow that up with pretty good combat attacks. All of their shooting, all of their combat is getting +1 to hit from the Primus. Don't skip the Crossfire bonus to give you bonus armor penetration. This is a unit that can blow up elite infantry like 10 Marines, 10 Khorne Berserkers, Black Templar blocks that you aren't going to be able to chip away with, doing some mortal wounds at a time, taking out 1 or 2 with mining lasers, because to slowly break them down, you would also have to sacrifice several units to keep it distracted while you wear it down. Better to have that strike team. And if you are scared by being within 8 inches of the Berserkers to throw the demolition charges, while the Berserkers have an 8-inch surge move, potentially, don't fire the Ridge Runner. Don't fire the Goliath truck. Throw the Demo Charges and fire the Flamers. If they want to surge, make sure that the truck is closer to them than the Acolytes. You can't surge into more than 1 unit, only the closest enemy unit. Then you charge with the Acolytes before the Berserkers can pile into the Acolytes. The Reductor Saboteur in that truck can also throw her own demolition charge and her grenades, and she can be dropped off on the objective to keep control of it and to do missions on that objective, while the Acolytes and the Primus get back into the truck and drive forward into the enemy. Keep the enemy held back, away from the Reductor Saboteur, who's going to keep giving you victory points. All of the Ridge Runners do the chaining crossfire. One with the mortar and ignore cover will help deep striking Acolytes with their hand flamers or bike shooting or other Ridge Runner shooting. Then you fire 2 of the mining lasers. One of them has a spotter to better hit, one of them has a flare launcher so that the unit can use smokescreen for free. They could crossfire something else, and then more of your units get the crossfire bonus. There's a lot of crossfire going on. This is an army list where I'm trying to do a bit more damage than the Outlander Claw usually does. But you need to be really careful as to which enemy units you destroy. Kill the ones that have high objective control. Destroy the small units that get them victory points until they only have their big murder blocks left. And then you use the Acolytes and the Ridge Runners to get rid of those particular big murder blocks. 5 Pure Strains infiltrate to block enemy infiltrate. 5 Acolytes with auto pistols and mining tools stay on the home objective. The Rock Grinders are counter-attacking units. You move towards a problem, the Hand Flamer Acolytes get out, they fire their 4 Hand Flamers. The Rock Grinders keep moving forward. The Acolytes may need to hold the objective. The Acolytes can complete missions on the objective. They remove the problem that's there, and then they score the victory points. When the Acolytes die, they or the bikes come back with resurgence points. The Neophytes do the same job as in the 1000 point list. Hold objectives, do an action, use a plan generations in the making, and then keep putting pressure on the enemy. Neophytes standing like 6 inches away from an objective means that if the enemy charges them, they can't consolidate onto the objective, which we control because of a plan generations in the making. You lose the Neophytes, this isn't a problem. You score the victory points, the enemy doesn't. And the 2 squads of Acolytes can deep strike to complete secondary missions. That could be in the enemy deployment zone, that could be on an objective that we already control, but we need to do something like cleanse. You have an immediate unit there to do the mission and score the victory points. That's the Outlander Claw that's worked for me. If you want a more standard army list, without the Primus bomb team, because I know that is not something that people usually go for, then I have yet another army list. So we're going for 4 army lists, potentially 5 army lists if you count the alternate version of the Combat Patrol army list. There's a lot of options, yet the army lists keep looking very similar because of the focus of the Outlander Claw. So this has 3 Rock Grinders. In the first Rock Grinder, there's a Reductor Saboteur with Assault Commando. The Assault Commando only affects that model, but she will get full rerolls to hit on her demolition charge and her remote mines when she disembarks. 5 Acolytes with Hand Flamers, let's stick to Hand Flamers with this squad, they deal with enemy light infantry. The other 2 Rock Grinders have the same, another Reductor Saboteur, another Hand Flamer Acolyte squad. No enhancements on these Reductor Saboteurs. Control the objective with the Reductor Saboteur, complete missions with the Reductor Saboteur, ideally control the objective and also be out of line of sight, use the remote explosives if you don't need to complete an action that turn. There's the same 5 Ridge Runners, lasers, spotter and flare launcher, one with a mortar and a survey auger. They want to stay on the home objective. That's another unit you can have on the home objective. Because this army list doesn't have acolytes with mining tools that are going to try and get more command points for you. We can do the same sort of trick with the neophytes as before. They start on the home objective, then they embark into a Goliath truck. The Benefictus in that Goliath truck is not attached to the neophytes. They have cartographic data leech to improve the ballistic skill of the weapons fired by the firing deck by 1. One of the reasons they're not attached is so they can start in there and the neophytes don't need to start in there, so there is something starting in the truck, and also they can live in that truck. The neophytes can keep getting out and completing missions. The truck can keep going and fire another 2 brain lasers. And then as a second line or bait for the enemy, there's a Goliath truck with 10 neophytes. You can drive that onto an objective, the enemy will destroy the truck, the neophytes fall out onto the objective. Maybe the enemy has another unit able to pile in and clear them up. Maybe you won't be able to pile in to a second unit in 11th edition if all the pile-ins are done at the same time. That's 2 units piling into the truck, neophytes fall out when the truck's destroyed, there's no more pile-in. There's only consolidate, and then the neophytes don't get attacked. We'll see how 11th edition turns out regarding that. In 10th edition, they're potential bait that can die, or they can complete objectives while the acolytes with the rock grinder, they all get back in, the neophytes can take over for one of the Reductor Saboteurs. And to keep that first turn, very early pressure, we have 2 squads of 5 Pure Strain Genestealers and 3 Atalan Bike squads. We need to keep the enemy back in that first turn. If they're able to take most of the middle of the board, we have a difficult time taking it from them and then trying to push onwards. That's not what this list does well. And if there are any missions where we need to be in a certain place to do an action, that's where we use resurgence points, and you only return the unit to the table when you have a mission to complete. Whatever dies first you use. Mainly I focus on the Pure Strains and the Acolytes, because they can deep strike. On the whole, the Outlander Claw is a flexible detachment because of the speed, and with these units it gives you all the tools to kill certain units of the enemy army and hold your objectives. And it's also the perfect combos to lose large parts of your army at once. You lose the vehicle and the units and the characters it was transporting. The units are not durable unless you can use stratagems on them, and you have a lot of units calling out for that defense all at once. So cycle units into the fight. Don't expose both units of the 2 Ridge Runners at the same time. Only one of them can use smokescreen, only one unit can use deft maneuvering. It's an army and detachment that certain players really enjoy the playstyle of, and others feel it's not the best for Genestealer Cult. I am in the latter camp. It's fun with the Outlander Claw, but it's not how I like to roll. And if you like the mechanized style of play, that can also work in the Brood Brothers Auxilia, which is a detachment I prefer and comes with a side of really big tanks with really big guns. Maybe that is more your speed after some consideration. But my culty darlings and viewers, have a great day of 40k.